Hey guys, coming to you in a cinematic mode this time, and that's because I'm going to tell you a story, and it's a true story. It's completely, I'm going to scratch my nose, it's so true. Let's see, so anyway, this is like this true story, you're going to love this. So, about 3 months ago, I think it was, about 3 or 4 months ago, I went to the dentist. Now, you see, let me tell you something, I didn't really ever have much dental care, so when the Obamacare thing came, I thought, gee, maybe I can finally get dental care, so I went in there. And I had my wisdom teeth out, that was about it. And I've been going to this place, and they found out the first time I went, I had like 3 cavities, and then one turned into a root canal, and I never had a root canal before. And then after that, I just did everything they told me to do. I mean, and I don't have any money, so I opened up like a credit card account that was here for like people who need that kind of thing, because my insurance didn't cover anything, my dental insurance basically. And so anyway, it was kind of scary because it ended up being like thousands of dollars, and I didn't have that money, and I had to talk with them and work things out with them, and finally we worked it all out, and I got all this dental care. So after that, I did everything they told me to do, like cleanings, laser cleanings, went there every 3 months, for like about a year, getting these both laser cleanings and deep cleanings because, I drink coffee and I smoke weed, and so apparently it's like a deadly combo, and, went for yearly checkups, had x-rays. Oh, you have a little bit of like, we need to get in there with another cleaning, or you get gum disease. They said I had gum disease. It was a trip. So I did everything. I started using mouthwash. I bought an expensive toothbrush, flossing. I started brushing like 3 or 4 times a day. People around me thought I was nuts. They thought I was like, oh, he dispenses. So anyway, I changed all my habits around, I could still do better, but, because, I just didn't want to have root canals and be like, have no teeth, that didn't seem cool. So I had other friends who just, said that was screwy, and they went and they bought cars and they bought toys and they just let their teeth fall out. I mean, literally, they were younger. Some of them were younger than I was, But, I just thought, well, screw that, good health is good health, So anyway, I went and that's what I did. So anyway, the last time I went in there, the dentist I usually, because this was just assigned by my dental insurance, I went in there, and this dude, it was a totally new dentist. It wasn't the one I'd worked with or anyone I'd worked with before. He was a young guy, and he took an X-ray, said absolutely no cavities, which is great, and but that they had this new thing they did called a CRR, which was a prophylactic filling. So in other words, it wasn't a filling and there was no cavity, but in this one tooth, he thought that it was very likely there was going to soon be a cavity, and so if we just did this very minimal filling that only cost $80, we'd be able to prevent any future decay. And so I was like, well, okay. So anyway, they did this, and they actually did the whole thing. They gave you the little painkillers, and they had to drill out, and so they drilled, and everything was going along, and then somewhere, I know this is weird, but somewhere in that moment, I knew something was wrong. I don't know how to explain it. It was just this feeling came over me, oh shit, and it was so strong that I know they felt it, because both the dentist and the assistant were both looking at each other, making eye contact over me, but even though, everything was going do 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 do, but then suddenly it's just like, it just knew it, but then there's nothing apparently wrong, so everything, they did the whole thing, and so I left. So about 4 days later, it started hurting, and it started hurting exactly the same way that this one had started hurting, because the dentist did like a filling and said, I think this is going to need to be a root canal, because it was deeper than I thought. And sure enough, the pain was just like that. But I thought, but why would I have that on this? It was a prophylactic feeling, like to prevent a root canal. So why would I be having those feelings? So I didn't really, I was like, I'll just maybe get used to it, So then a couple more days go by, and so what happened is it just so happened during this time I was moving, and I didn't really know where I was going to, because I was being kicked out of where I had been living because the city deemed it unfit living conditions. But I got paid relocation money, but the problem was I couldn't find any place to move to that I could actually continue to sustain, and I was still working on that actually. But anyway, so like, yeah, okay, so I was under like some stress and stuff, and so I was moving everything into storage, and I was going to this motel, and I didn't know like where I was going to go after that. All right, but and meanwhile, like this pain in my mouth is like driving me mad. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I think, am I just worrying, or is it like maybe it's just stress or something? So finally, like about a week later, I go back to the dentist, and I don't really have the time or whatever to do this, but I go back and I say, hey, So he says, well, you may need maybe a height adjustment because, when you have it first done, you're numb there, so you can't tell if it's too high or not. So, and he has me open my, oh, this is definitely too high. I can tell this is too high. So then he does a height adjustment and says I'm good to go. It should be okay now. So then I go, okay, I leave. And so I go back to my life. Which was having its ups and downs. There were really good things going on, really good things, but there were also some stressful things, with uncertainty and stuff. But, and so like, I'm like, okay. And so like the pain starts again, I was like, fuck, so it's like another week before I can make it back there. This time I said, doc, it's waking me up in the middle of the night. He says, oh, it's waking you up in the middle of the night. Well, oh my God, let's take an x-ray. So he takes an x-ray. He comes back and I'm waiting there. And, it's always fun sitting in an office and wondering what they're going to come back and tell you, And anyway, and the pain was beginning to get to that point. It wasn't the worst, I suppose, but it was beginning to get to that point where, it makes your heart double beat, or like, at moments everything's fine, and then you feel this pain, and suddenly you're just as irritable as you could freaking ever be, and everyone in the whole room knows it because, you just had this mysterious pain strike, and so anyway, like, so I'm waiting, and then the guy comes back, he slaps the x-ray in the little viewer next to the chair and says, well, you see, you have this really aggressive molar nerve in that tooth. This is this backmost tooth back here. And it rises up really high, aggressively high, more so than usual. And as you can see, it's not quite touching the filling, but there is a slight, there's a very slight gap between them, and you may need a root canal. I said, like, you're serious? He said, well, no, come talk to the specialist. Now, the specialist only comes here every 2 weeks, so it's very important that if this pain continues, because I think the feeling is still high, and I'm going to adjust it and polish it again right now. But if, you need to see the specialist if the pain continues, and don't miss that appointment, because she's only here every 2 weeks. So they polished it again, and they sent me on my way. The pain was a little better, but then it started getting worse, and then it started going into my ear, I was like, shit, So anyway, I go to the endo, and I'm just hoping and praying that, like, this is not a root canal, because I'm having this sinking feeling that they're going to charge me for it, and I don't know why, but it's just like, it seems like they do. Seriously, they aren't going to charge me for this, right? So anyway, like, so I go in there, and the endo says, okay, we spray this cold, freezing substance on this piece of gauze, and we press it against this tooth in question for a moment, and you raise your hand and lower it when you stop feeling pain. So she did that, and, so my hand was up for like 30 seconds. And in the 30 seconds, she says, okay, well, if it hasn't stopped by now, sir, I'm afraid you need a root canal. And so I'm like, okay, so I didn't have any money to pay for this because, you see, I just paid off all my credit cards in an attempt to be able to not have monthly payments so that I could pay the rent new rent I had to pay, which is 3 times higher than my old one. And I had just managed to contain it if I didn't have to make credit card payments. And now they're telling me that the only way I was going to have to do it was by paying for it. And I started saying, well, wait a minute. I did a recommended procedure that my dentist told me to do to prevent tooth decay and subsequent, I suppose, root canals. And now I'm having to have one. Well, sir, it says in the contract that you signed when you agreed to this procedure that there's always a 1% chance that any dental procedure could result in a root canal. Even a cleaning or a scaling could result in a root canal. And so you just made an informed risk decision, except I don't think they use those words quite, so whatever. And so yes, I'm afraid that you're going to have to pay for it, but we'll try to make it as inexpensive as possible. And so normally, basically, it's $2,500 for root canal, but they were giving it to me for $1,900. And I said, well, I'm afraid that I can't make those payments. I just got out of debt, and this isn't my fault. I mean, if I have to second guess the dentist, like if I'm supposed to, like, you're saying essentially that I should have looked this dentist in the eye and said, no, I know better than you, doctor. I'm not having you do that. Or like he says, well, I think you need this. No, doctor, you don't, because I know better than you. I've been to dental school, and I've worked on at least 200 or 300 patients, so doctor. And I was like, how the hell am I being held responsible for doing what he said was in my best interest to do? Well, there's a 1% risk in any dental procedure, and it's acknowledged in the contract, and I'm afraid, sir, that, that's just the way it is. So I said, can I talk to a manager? I'm afraid that we don't have a manager here. The last one got promoted to regional manager, and they haven't found a replacement yet, sir. Can I speak to the regional manager? He's on vacation right now, sir. So I said, you don't have anyone I can talk to? I'm afraid not, sir, but sir, we can knock the price off if you don't get the best crown, because they had to show me these two crowns, okay? One looks like something that someone flecked off a piece of paper, and the other one looks like a solid, substantial tooth, okay? And she says, now this one is only $500. This one here is $950. I said, well, the tooth I had was working perfectly fine before you touched it, so I don't feel spoiled or entitled selecting the best because it's not going to be as good as what I had. So then they shut up about that. And so I got the best, the lava crown, but they was gonna still have to charge me, and then there was no way they could do it, but anything about it, because no one there had the authority to do anything. And then the endo specialist comes in, the one who tested my tooth, and she says, well, you really need to have this done now, sir, because I'm not going to be in for another 2 weeks, and I don't think you want to spend another 2 weeks, because I can tell that this is becoming seriously, it's going to start affecting your health. It's become worse and worse and more painful. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Okay, so then they pull out my credit card, which I just paid off. I mean, literally just paid off, okay? And, and they look at it and say, they're saying you don't have available credit. I'm saying, what? So then they take me in, and I thought, we'll get this worked out, sir, okay? So then they do the whole thing. They do, I'm now in there, and they do the whole thing, and it's the root, it's the specialist was working on. I said, so tell me, do you think I should have had this procedure done if it was, after all, my choice to have this, And she says, well, there are very many different dental opinions out there, but I always like to say, less is more. And, if the tooth wasn't having any problems, then it probably should have been left alone. But I see this all the time as a root canal. I mean, maybe it's only 1 out of every 1,000 CRRs this happens, but as the endo who has to take care of the remaining 1%, I see it all the time. I said, oh. So then they start doing everything, and then it starts causing me pain. She says, oh, you're so sensitive, sir. My goodness, we have to use double the amount. So they have to even more. And then they start opening it up, and there's just 3 or 4 minutes of complete silence. And then the woman, the endo woman says, this tooth is so inflamed. So anyway, then I come out of that, and they haven't put in the temporary cap yet here, okay? They're just this is just, now you have this tooth with a hole in it, and the woman who does billing comes up to me and says, we can't continue service, sir, because we can't charge. I said, what do you mean you can't charge? Well, we can't charge, sir, because they're not saying you have funds available. I just paid them off. Well, I'm sure you did, sir. So then, with this hole in my mouth, I have to get on the phone because she's too busy, talking to other people about how they can take care of their dentistry. I have to call my credit card. I have to wait through the music, for 5 minutes while, going, I can barely speak, okay? They couldn't have told me this before, and now I'm here, okay? And so now, okay, so then they come up, and the guy says, how can I help you, sir? And I say, well, I'm in the dentistry. I can't really speak right now, and I just had this surgery done, and they're telling me they can't complete the procedure because you guys won't release the fund that I just paid off. And he says, oh, and there's this long moment of silence. He says, yes, sir, I can see you did pay us off, and you paid off in a rather large sum of over several, $2,000 or $3,000 at once, and federal law mandates that because you paid off such a large sum, we have to hold that sum for 10 days to make sure that it is indeed a viable sum before we can release that credit to you. I said, well, I'm right here in the middle of the dentist right now, and they tell me that this is a serious procedure they need to have now, and I thought I had the credit, but now I feel like I'm sort of between a rock and a hard place. Is there any way you might be able to release this funds for me? And he says, let me talk with my supervisor. And it was like there, no one's paying any attention. Dentists are walking past you, giving you dirty looks with their Apple watches, and they're sitting time, and the people, and other people are coming. Oh, I need this and I need that, and you're and I'm like, time is passing, and time you're wondering, I want to be on the streets because I'm going to be in another hole. Anyway, well, sir, thank you for being such a valued customer and making all your credit payments always on time for the last 3 years, because we got the okay to front you the money, and you can go ahead and have the procedure. Just put me on the line with your billing specialist. So I did. So they were able to zip out their $1,900 before they would, give me the treatment. And after all, as a consumer, I, was electively purchasing. And so, yeah. And so then, they just put it all together. And I left. And so then I said, I really want to speak to your manager when he comes back from vacation. So he did. And I made an appointment to see him. And basically, he just tells me, and what can I do? Anyway, he tells me, well, sir, I really am sorry for your experience, sort of like it was a restaurant going experience or a movie going experience, or an amusement park ride, And we apologize for that, but I do see that we already gave you a substantial discount on this. I said, well, and I just went through the whole thing, second guessing your dentist, trying, finding that, and then also starting to say, if he could have seen on the x-ray that I had an aggressive molar nerve. The very first time I saw this new dentist, he took x-rays. He put them in front of me and said, you have no cavities, but I would suggest that we do. Okay, couldn't he looked at those x-rays and they're right there at his fingertips and looked at the the nerve that was in question, since apparently it's the first thing he went to talk about when he looked to see what went wrong? Why didn't he look at that before things went wrong and was ahead of the curve before I had to follow his advice, since apparently it was such a factor, and that's a good question, sir. Perhaps we could suggest having a peer review for him. But in the meanwhile, I said, well, no, I don't think that there's a meanwhile. You also said there were 2 height adjustments, and if couldn't that have exacerbated the nerve and maybe caused it to, to die? They're very sensitive. I know from the last time I had a root canal. And he says, well, that's a possibility. But tell you what, sir, we'll give you half off. I mean, we'll pay for the services, but since you did get a very expensive top-of-the-line crown, you'd have to admit you should pay for that. I said, no, I had a perfectly healthy tooth. You're telling me that these crowns are better than healthy teeth. Why don't I just start wrenching? I didn't say this, but you just get this impression. Oh, here. Put in a new lava crown. I can't wait to have a new one, So anyway, I said, no, I don't think that was the purpose of my dentistry and my oral hygiene. I'm afraid I don't agree with that. And yes, I have no compunctions at all that I got the best crown, seeing as I'm sure this tooth probably would have lasted another, 5 years, it's just. So anyway, so then he says, well, I'll tell you what, we'll make a complaint and we'll send it up to management and see what they say. So a couple weeks go by and I get a call from Tracy, who's like, I don't really see what the problem is, sir. I mean, you had a procedure and it was completed successfully. So then I have to go through the whole thing with her, and all the way, then halfway through she says, what do you do for a living, sir? Or whatever. I said, well, I'm a freelance artist, and that's why I don't have a steady income, and that's why it is I did all this effort to pay off my credit cards so I wouldn't have to make these overhead with my rent payments. And she says, oh, really? I'm a freelance artist. I'm an artist, too. Oh, that's great. But it's just so hard to make a living out there as an artist. I mean, that's why I have to work this job. I don't like this job, but boy, you're out there doing it full time. I'm so envious. Oh, yeah, well, thank you. Oh, wow, I wish I could do that. But, it's just, I said, well, I feel you. So anyway, so I really need a break on this because after all, I don't feel that it was my responsibility. And after all, I do feel like I was following medical advice and it would be nice, Just, well, I'm sorry, sir, but my management says that the best we can do is keep you $950. Half the charge. I mean, after all, you do have to, maybe I'll talk with them again and I'll tell them your circumstances. I said, that's not my circumstances. I have no problem with my circumstances. My problem is that It sounds like you guys are scamming me. Okay, oh, here, do this little $80 procedure. Oh, well, I mean, boy, just because it's written in your contract doesn't mean this supposed to malpractice, okay? And I'm not going to stand by it. So then she tells me to file an insurance claim, and so I do that. They don't seem to do anything. They can't even get it right. They thought I wanted $80 back for the original thing. They couldn't even get that I wanted the $1,900 for the subsequent resulting root canal. They were so swift over there. So, I did what I could with them, but then I filed a credit card dispute with the same credit card company to forward me to whatever. I told them I wrote up a whole piece and I got my medical records, and 3 days ago they reversed the charge. Thank fucking God. They said we were not responsible for this, and they sent it off and they're billing my dentist.